Breaking news in the ongoing Canada Post workers' strike. The federal government is stepping in, with the Labour Minister saying Canadians are rightfully fed up. Good afternoon. It's been 4 weeks since Canada Post workers went on strike, and now Ottawa is setting the stage for a possible intervention to get mail moving again.
Federal Labour Minister Steven MacKinnon says he is calling a timeout in the strike, which could see the Canada Industrial Relations Board send about 55,000 employees back to work. The minister says the Canadian Union of Postal Workers and the Crown Corporation are at an impasse, and people across the country, especially small businesses, people in remote communities, and Indigenous people have suffered greatly while postal services are halted.
So I have directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to determine if they see the prospect of a negotiated settlement in the near term, the very near term. If not, if they reach the same conclusion that I have reached quite conclusively, then they shall emit a directive to resume activities at Canada Post and extend the collective agreements till May 22nd.
MacKinnon says he's stepping in for reasons of sustainability for Canada Post and its employees. The minister added he's asked the board to make a decision quickly and hopes the mail will be delivered again starting next week.
Turning now to a healthcare headache on this frigid Friday. The St. Joseph's Hospital is battling with the cold after a boiler system failure cut off heat, hot water and steam.
It's causing a major disruption to services at the West End Hospital with no indication when this problem might be fixed. Our Sean Leathong is at St. Joseph's with the latest on the situation. Unfortunate because it is so cold today.
Certainly is, Michelle and Nathan. As we all know, it's probably the coldest day we've seen in some time. Then we find out that this boiler has failed at St. Joe's. Now, we've been trying to get updates from the communications team at St. Joe's. They haven't provided anybody to talk to us at this point. They haven't told us when this started or given a timeline for when it may be fixed. And we have been talking to some patients who say they are managing to keep things warm inside. On a cold December morning, a boiler outage at St. Joe's means there's no heat or hot water inside the hospital.
When you first walk in, there's a wall, and in that area it's a little chilly from the doors rotating.
Norma and David Spall were visiting a friend in the emergency room who's been there since yesterday. They say so far there is little difference inside.
Once you go through that area into the emergency where the rooms are and the beds are, etc., it's actually warmer in there. It's fine.
It's colder out here.
In a statement, Unity Health is calling this an emergency situation, and they're asking patients to avoid the emergency room unless it is life-threatening. Also, all non-essential activities are being canceled across the ambulatory, procedural, and surgical areas. They say patients will be contacted. Any patients who are receiving chemotherapy or dialysis will not be impacted.
Anywhere near a door or a window, it's cold.
This man was visiting his wife on the 6th floor, and he says the hospital seems to be running as usual.
There's no mention of it, so as I say, you really don't feel any effect up there.
It's not bad, actually. It's not bad. They have heaters and all that.
According to some, there appears to be some space heaters running inside to provide help. Now, when it comes to an update that we did get from the staff at St. Joe's, they are saying that they've received inquiries for a lot of donations for blankets and space heaters. They say they can't accept them at this time. Now, when it comes to anybody who wants to visit loved ones, they are accepting visitors today. They're saying that if they want to bring blankets or anything like that for their loved one, they certainly can, but they're asking people not to bring any space heaters as it would crowd the hospital. And of course, when it comes to certain appointments, we know that they will be canceled. Patients will be contacted as well. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. Well, the time has come. The federal government's GST relief begins at midnight, and many small businesses say they will be up all night making sure they're ready for the new tax rules. Starting Saturday and running until February 15th, Ottawa is waiving the 5% GST on a laundry list of products. Most food items, including restaurant meals, as well as some alcoholic beverages, made the cut. The tax break will also apply to a number of items for children, including clothing, footwear, toys, and video game consoles. Small businesses say they're struggling to figure out what is and isn't covered and trying to make sure they get everything right.
I didn't expect to have to dedicate hours of every day the last few days figuring this out.
There's no easy way of doing it. We're going to have to do it manually and bill it all out, and then that's going to lose it on our online.
A recent survey by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business found only 4% of small businesses surveyed expect to get a sales boost from the tax break.
And still to come, more on the impact of the so-called tax holiday and what it will mean for small business owners. That's a little later in the newscast.
But first, let's take a live look at our fair city this afternoon. The frigid conditions, they persist. Fortunately, we do have bright sunshine heading into the weekend, but it is doing little to cut that wind chill. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. It's cold.
It is very cold. You have that sunshine that we've been missing, honestly, at the start of the week, but we got that trade-off when that cloud cover lifted. We are going to see lighter winds into the afternoon, so that will help a little, but it still really is one of those frigid days that you do need to layer up. The bulk of the flurry activity still lingering in those areas kind of near Barrie, just north. They're still watching for a few centimeters of snow, and the same through Owen Sound, but the bulk of those snow squall warnings are gone for now. Now, temperature-wise, it is still really cool out there. We're at -4 here in the city, feeling like -11. Everybody holding on to those wicked wind chills. It's not as bad, relatively speaking, up towards Wyerton as winds are a little bit lighter, but really and truly, it's not until we get into the day tomorrow that we go back on that kind of warming trend. We'll get to a more seasonal point as we head in towards your weekend, but it also comes with some messy weather in the way of rain. Coming up, your full forecast right now. Back over to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Jazz. A Toronto man will face the mandatory life sentence for the brutal murder of his girlfriend.
His sentence handed down in court today, 3 years after the homicide took place. CTV's Mike Walker is at the courthouse and brings us the details. Mike.
Well, Nathan, Michelle, this was a rather quick sentencing lasting less than 30 minutes. Carlin Walker stood before a judge as he was handed an automatic life sentence with no chance of parole eligibility for 25 years. Nabila Amizada was killed in November 2021 by her boyfriend Carlin Walker, who the court heard confined and assaulted her in this Scarborough home. Walker was arrested at the scene and charged. Today, he was handed a mandatory life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years after a jury found him guilty of first-degree murder in October. The offense of first-degree murder in this case involved shocking violence by Mr. Walker towards Ms. Amanzada. The violence to Ms. Amanzada was significantly aggravated because it was perpetuated by Mr. Walker in the context of an intimate partner relationship, Justice Michael Brown said when handing down the sentence. Justice Brown noted Amanzada and Walker started dating in 2019, 3 months after meeting, and that Walker repeatedly assaulted her throughout the relationship. Speaking on intimate partner violence, Justice Brown said, "Everyone is entitled to live their lives free of fear and violence. Certainly, Nabila Amanzada was entitled to that. Tragically, she experienced both of the hands of Mr. Walker." Some of Amanzada's family members were in the court and hugged each other after the sentence was handed down. They declined to comment on the case. The judge also noting they did not want to provide victim impact statements because they don't want to share their pain publicly. Walker has been in custody since his arrest. He will be eligible for parole in November 2046. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Fire crews spent the overnight hours battling a house fire near Bathurst and Eglinton. Crews were called to the two-alarm blaze on Elderwood Drive just after 1:30. The flames were in the roof of this two-story home. Fortunately, no one was injured. The fire is now out. No word at this point on a cause.
2 people are in hospital after a crash in North York last night. It happened just before 10 o'clock on Wilson between Jane and Keele. Paramedics say 2 people have serious and potentially life-threatening injuries. No word on the circumstances of the crash or if any charges are pending.
Ontario's Special Investigations Unit is now looking into the death of a man who was struck by a TTC bus. The 55-year-old died after he was hit by a bus outside Ossington Station on Tuesday night. The SIU says before the man was struck, police had encountered him behaving in a strange manner inside the subway station. They spoke with him and he left the area, and a short time later, he was struck by the bus. He later died in hospital.
The break-ins were violent, targeting spas in Toronto and Markham.
Armed robberies caught on camera, and according to investigators, the suspects were all teenagers. CTV's Janice Golding reports.
Hello, I'm calling 911 right now.
Around 4:20 a.m. on November 23rd, 3 males enter the foyer of a spa at Birchmount and 14th Avenue and pound the door open with a sledgehammer. The trio enters the spa, each running to different areas. In one of the shots, you can clearly see a suspect run from a room with a gun in his right hand. Two suspects reappear from the opposite direction and start going through an entryway desk, going through drawers and cupboards and looking along the floor in search of something. Eventually, they disappear into a side room again before they reappear, making off with cash and a vehicle. This is one of 3 spa robberies police say took place over the course of 2 weeks, with 2 additional armed robberies taking place in Toronto. Police say in 4 of the 5 robberies, a stolen car was used. 19-year-old Aidan Murray from Toronto is wanted for 5 counts of robbery with a firearm and 2 counts of forcible confinement, while 19-year-old Daquan Estrada Kelly was charged with possession of property obtained by crime and possession of break-in instruments, and 3 youths aged 16 and 17 were also charged with various crimes, including robbery with a firearm and forcible confinement. 3 of the parties that were charged were on release orders and weapons prohibitions at the time of the arrests.
Janice Golding, CTV News. 3 youths, meantime, have been arrested after a series of shootings at a Richmond Hill movie theater.
Police confirmed they're now facing more than 100 charges. CTV's Beth McDonnell has the details.
There was not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 shootings outside York Cinemas this past May and June in Richmond Hill. Police say each time a trio of teenage boys is responsible for firing from different vehicles as they stopped in front of the main entrance.
It's brazen.
Now York Regional Police have arrested the 3 suspects, a 16-year-old from Whitchurch Stouffville, a 15-year-old from Oshawa, and a 15-year-old from Toronto. In all, they're facing 109 charges, including conspiracy to commit an indictable offense and discharge firearm into a place reckless to others, all failing to comply with conditions of a Youth Criminal Justice Act sentence or a release order.
They were actually linked to several other incidents that occurred in Markham, Richmond Hill, and Stouffville, all of which were pretty violent. It's quite concerning, especially given their ages, that they are in possession of a firearm and shooting freely, essentially, at these locations.
Close to 6 months later, the investigation continues, with officers on the ground and extra surveillance. Police say the cinema, located near East Beaver Creek Road and Highway 7, had been showing films at the time of the shootings with patrons inside, but no one was hurt. Police allege the 3 are also responsible for an early morning shooting during the summer at Bayview Hill Elementary School. The motive for all 5 shootings remains unclear.
These were targeted incidents. In terms of why they were firing the guns, that is, again, part of the investigation.
Video evidence from the community helped police piece together the investigation and charge the teenage boys. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
The Toronto Police Board has approved its 2025 operating budget, which includes a more than $46 million increase. If approved by City Council in February, the nearly 4% increase would bring the police budget to over $1.2 billion. The board says 41% of the budget will go towards 911 response and patrols, and 35% towards investigations and victim support. It also includes money to support a multi-year hiring program approved in November, which will include adding 720 new officers over the next 2 years.
Faculty at Ontario colleges will be in a position to strike or be locked out early in the new year. OPSEU, which represents professors, instructors, and librarians, has requested a no-board report from the Ministry of Labour. Once it's issued, it will begin a 16-day countdown to a strike or lockout. The union says there's been no real progress towards a contract which improves the working lives of its members. Colleges say OPSEU's latest offer amounts to more than $1 billion in new annual costs. The 2 sides will meet once more for non-binding mediation January 6th.
The province is considering restricting the LCBO from buying American-made alcohol in response to possible Trump tariffs. This move would effectively bar sales of American alcohol if the U.S. imposes 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. Doug Ford's government says the LCBO is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world, so a restriction of that kind will have an effect. The premier has also doubled down on the idea of restricting electricity exports to Michigan, New York State, and Minnesota. Manitoba's premier says he's also considering retaliatory measures against potential U.S. tariffs.
Some other provinces and territories, the federal government, have been talking about retaliatory tariffs. I'll tell you that some folks are also saying retaliation is not going to work. I can share that that perspective is a part of these conversations as well.
Premier Wab Kinew hasn't revealed any details about potential measures, but says Manitoba has to take the tariff threat seriously. He's also promising to beef up border security, something Quebec's premier says he discussed with Donald Trump when they met in Paris.
And he told me very clearly that we can avoid those tariffs if we do what needs to be done with the border.
Legault adds he is not willing to cut off the flow of electricity to the U.S., as Ontario has threatened to do. As for the federal plan to address issues at the border, Alberta's premier says she expects it to be made public on Monday, as it remains a core issue in the dispute.
It sounds to me like that message has been heard loud and clear. All of the premiers mentioned that in our first meeting with the Prime Minister, and he reported back with the plan that he is going to be rolling out. He wanted to make sure that he'd run it by us first before making the call to the U.S. President, and then, of course, we'll see more detail around it on December the 16th. And so the things that he shared are very consistent with the things that we announced today in Alberta. So I hope that that is going to be enough to get the conversation going in a different direction. But I think we're all steeling ourselves for the fact that we may be facing across the board 25% tariffs on January 20th.
The measures Alberta's premier mentioned include a $29 million plan to create a sheriff-led team to increase surveillance at the border and to arrest those crossing illegally or attempting to traffic drugs or weapons.
Returning now to the so-called tax holiday. The GST break takes effect tomorrow. For more on this, we're joined by CTV's Scott Hurst. Scott, what do consumers need to know? What is covered and what is not? There is some confusion. I wonder how surprised people will be at the checkout.
There's quite a laundry list of items that will be exempt, but there are also a lot of exemptions to that list, so it might be confusing. But here's what consumers need to know. The GST holiday coming into effect in the final stretch of holiday shopping, just 2 weekends left before Christmas, as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are desperate for something they propose to be popular. So here's a list of some of the big ticket items that consumers can expect to be applied to this tax break, including children's clothing, footwear, car seats and diapers, some children's toys, books, board games, dolls, video game consoles, Christmas trees at a time, of course, they're quite popular this time of year. Prepared foods, restaurant meals, both dine-in and takeout, some snack food items as well. On top of that, beer, wine, and other alcoholic beverages. But there are lots of exemptions to this list as well. And that is what is leading to some of the confusion. But for consumers, there's nothing they need to do. This will be applied at the checkout. So for most Canadians, it means about 5% savings from the GST. But for other provinces like Ontario and the Maritime provinces, where there is a harmonized provincial and federal tax, the full HST will be waived. So when you go to the checkout, it'll be waived on the items that are on the list, Michelle. That is what consumers need to know.
Okay, so how are businesses feeling about the tax break? Because you have to think that this might drive people in. Maybe they've been holding off on some big purchases because they can save some real money here.
That is what the Liberal government is hoping, and of course that is what businesses are hoping as well. In the lead up to this, we've heard a lot of frustration from businesses because it has meant a lot of work on them to get ahead of this, to be prepared for this when it does go into effect tomorrow, and it runs until mid-February. So for businesses, this has been a lot of work to try to implement a tax code on so many different items, and they have to figure out what is on the list, what isn't on the list, and concern about what happens if they get it wrong when it comes down to tax time for them. And even products that are on the list have some exemptions. So for businesses, there's been a lot of extra work. Here's one business in Toronto that we spoke to about getting ready for this tax holiday.
If they wanted to give Canadians any kind of a financial relief, which I am all for, I'm not just a small business owner, I'm a Canadian consumer and a mother. So I understand any kind of financial relief at a time like Christmas, but they just needed to do it themselves and not at the expense of small business owners at such a busy time of year.
Yeah, so what we're hearing from many businesses, as you heard right there, it's a bit more of a headache right now to set it all up, and then they'll set it all up, and then 2 months later they're saying, well, we're going to have to take it all off again. So a lot of work for businesses. Could they get a boost in sales? That is what they hope, and that is what the Liberals hope as well.
We will have to wait and see. We'll certainly follow this into the weekend and beyond. CTV Scott Hurst in the CTV National Newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
With economic concerns in the spotlight, the federal finance minister is set to speak this hour. Deputy PM and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is here in Toronto for the speech, which officials say will focus on economic growth. It comes as the minister is preparing to table the federal fall economic statement on Monday. Freeland said Tuesday she expects the statement to show a declining debt to GDP ratio. She did not commit to meeting her own $40.1 billion deficit target.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was set to have a virtual meeting with his G7 counterparts this morning. The leaders due to discuss the situation in Syria. Earlier, G7 leaders have released a statement affirming their commitment to support a political transition in Syria. Today's meeting comes as Canada prepares to take over the G7 presidency. The next summit will be held in Alberta in June of 2025.
And in Syria today, mass rallies are underway celebrating the collapse of the Assad regime. Large crowds gathered after Friday prayers in what many are calling a Victory Friday. One journalist says there's a carnival-like atmosphere as families mingle with rebels. The celebrations come as a cloud of uncertainty hangs over Syria. The leader of the insurgency that toppled Assad says he's working to set up security and begin a political transition.
Meanwhile, Israel ordered its troops to prepare to remain in a so-called buffer zone along its border with Syria through the winter. Israeli forces seized the area after the Assad regime's collapse, with the country's leaders saying they're doing so to prevent a vacuum in that area. The UN has called the presence of troops there and ongoing Israeli strikes a violation of Syria's sovereignty. Israel captured most of the Golan Heights from Syria in 1967. Most of the international community considers that area to be occupied.
Also today, Palestinian authorities say 37 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a building in central Gaza. Footage from the scene showed a completely collapsed building with people searching among the destruction for victims who still were under the rubble. More than 40 people, including children, were said to be among the injured. There was no immediate comment from the Israeli military on the deadly strike.
For weeks now, strange lights have been hovering in the skies over New Jersey, believed to be clusters of drones.
With no indication of where they're from or what they're doing, residents and politicians are demanding answers. Here's CTV's Joy Malvin.
The nighttime flights began last month.
There's another one.
Swarms of them startling local residents.
And I see two big drones. They were propeller driven, going very slowly.
For almost a month now, drones, some as big as small cars, have been spotted flying over parts of New Jersey, near military facilities, weapon depots, even President-elect Donald Trump's Bedminster golf course. One Republican suggesting this on Fox News.
Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones,
prompting the Pentagon to shoot down that theory.
There is not any truth to that. There's no so-called mothership launching drones towards the United States.
Even the FBI didn't have answers.
What is going on in New Jersey?
We do not attribute that to an individual or a group yet. We're investigating, but I don't have an answer of who's responsible for that.
After a meeting with Homeland Security, local officials came away frustrated, demanding Washington take this more seriously.
6-foot drones. I mean, that's not somebody who went to Best Buy and picked up a toy. That's a legitimate aircraft.
They fly low, they fly fast, and sometimes go dark, making it difficult for police helicopters to track them down.
The most important point to say is we don't see any concern for public safety.
But assurances by the governor isn't cutting it.
And we're not hearing from people who see a Bigfoot. So that's why I said, bring in the Department of Defense, shut down the airspace until we figure out what are these drones doing.
And with no clear answer who's behind them or why they're here, the FBI's begun an investigation and set up a tip line. Joy Malvin, CTV News, Washington.
France's embattled President Emmanuel Macron has appointed a new prime minister. Centrist Francois Bayrou will take on the role as Macron tries to calm a political crisis that has left his authority dwindling. He takes over from Michel Barnier, who saw his minority government collapse in just 3 months after trying to force through a budget without majority support. And in South Korea, demonstrations continue ahead of another key vote that could see President Yoon Suk-yeol removed from office. The country's leader faces a second impeachment vote tomorrow in the aftermath of his short-lived decision to impose martial law. A previous attempt by the opposition to impeach Yoon failed as his party's members refused to take part.
A major court ruling in Japan could pave the way for same-sex marriages in the country. A high court found today Japan's refusal to recognize same-sex marriages is unconstitutional. It's the latest in a series of lawsuits filed by advocates since 2019. It's the 8th ruling of its kind, as opposed to one from a separate court that found the ban was permitted. The rulings can still be appealed to Japan's Supreme Court. The government says it's monitoring pending lawsuits and public opinion. Jess.
Well, we have the sunshine remaining today thanks to high pressure, but it is still very cold outside. The wind chill not as wicked, but still very noticeable as we wrap up the work and school week. So layers still very key if you plan on spending some time outside. -3 this afternoon, it'll feel like -7. That southwesterly wind light becoming westerly later on. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including a rebound to some above seasonal weather as we step in towards the weekend. All those details after the break.
Well, another ice-cold day. I know winter has not officially begun, but so what? It feels like it, doesn't it?
You know what? I was looking at the calendar. It comes next week. But hey, it's cold, yes, although I would say the sun is really nice, especially heading into the weekend. And for folks who might be having to go north or whatever, at least the conditions won't be so treacherous. You have nice bright skies, glistening snow.
It's nice, and they have snow up there. We don't have snow here, but the sunshine is nice. I feel like, I know it's wintertime, but we all need the sunshine, like photosynthesis, although it is the winter. You need that sunshine to feel like you've got that energy, and we have that today into tomorrow, but it is so cold out there. But the good news is, if you like the warmer winter weather, we have that heading in towards next week. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. Now, lots of sunshine out there early on this morning. The shot from our chopper up around 8 a.m. So beautiful sunshine out there, but it is not warm. We are obviously into December, but we're still sitting below that seasonal point really from start to finish as we head throughout the day today. So keep that in mind. It is going to be one of those ones you want to keep the layers pretty close. If you're heading outside to go skating, say this afternoon, or you're going to go this evening, it's not a bad night to do so, but you will definitely need to consider those extra layers. The good news, again, the winds are significantly lighter than they were yesterday. We're at -3 right now. It feels like -10. We're at across southern Ontario. We're still dealing for the most part with some double-digit wind chills, but it's better than it was yesterday. Into the afternoon, we're sitting around -3, so we don't really change all that much. We're holding on again below seasonal. We should be at 2, but everybody warming up a hint, just a pinch, just a little bit. But that sunshine definitely nicer and easier to enjoy it today without all of that extra wind out there. Into this evening, though, another cold one below seasonal, -8, feeling like -11. Waterloo region, it'll feel like -20, the same through London and out through Bancroft. So tonight, it is still one of those really cool ones. Now, we had all of that snow over the past couple of days. Bracebridge, for example, saw about 47 centimeters, all said and done as of this morning. And when it comes to the wind, it was gusty out there. Even through the city of Toronto, we saw those peak wind gusts yesterday at about 82 kilometers an hour. So today, a significant difference. You get a little bit of a break. We are still looking at a few very light streamers along Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, but for the most part, we have a few areas of high pressure moving in, giving us a break today and tomorrow before another system comes up. But this time, falling as rain. As we head throughout the rest of our day, again, those light flurries right along that kind of eastern shoreline of Georgian Bay. For the GTA, the downtown core, the majority of southern Ontario, lots of sunshine. It's not warm, but it's sunshine. As we head in towards our Friday evening, nice and clear out there. Those double-digit wind chill values are going to be an issue. Into your Saturday, lots of sunshine to start the day. The cloud cover rolls in late afternoon, early evening. It is a warmer day. We'll sit around the freezing mark for the most part throughout the afternoon. And then getting into our Sunday as this cloud cover rolls in, we'll see a change in wind direction. The system rolls in, bringing rain kind of later in the day on Sunday. So for a lot of folks, It will look kind of more of like a wet snow. This really isn't likely to accumulate because, again, we're on the positive side, and then it's just followed in by straight up rain as we head through the overnight and into the day on Monday. But temperature-wise, it is cool today, but we are slowly starting to warm up. We get back to the freezing mark for your Saturday. Sunday, that afternoon, evening mixing that turns into rain. We're sitting at 4 degrees for the high, 3 for the low. So whatever does come out there melts on contact. So for a lot of people that have snow right now, it'll lessen, if not completely go away, depending on how much you have. And looking into next week, we're staying kind of around that positive temperature range. So it's not too bad, Nathan, all things considered. I'll send things back to you and Michelle.
All right, not bad at all. Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
A Halifax woman is sharing her story after an owl attacked her while she was out for a run.
Wildlife experts acknowledge this kind of thing is rare, but it can happen if the owl mistakes a human as prey. CTV's Hafsa Arif has more.
It's not unusual to see wildlife along this popular trail in Halifax, and most of the time, they don't bother you. But that wasn't the case for Hannah Bailey on her evening jog.
It hit me in the back of my head, and I didn't notice at first. I thought maybe someone had come up behind me and was just trying to get my attention.
But it wasn't a person, it was an owl.
Continued on again. After like 5 minutes or so, it hit me again. Realized it had been following me. And with a little bit more force that time.
A startling experience.
It felt like someone had really long nails and they were like grabbing the back of your head and sort of scraping their nails down your scalp and then pulling on your ponytail at the same time.
Bailey has no injuries, and according to wildlife experts, there's not much to worry about.
In my 20 years with the department, I've seen or heard of 3 incidents.
Just the owls letting people know that that's their space. Also, trying to avoid certain times of the day. Owls tend to be very active through the night and at dawn and dusk.
Owls also may mistake people on the trail as prey.
I think this behavior is more related to protecting their territory, but it could be that they see the ponytail or the hat as a movement of food.
DNRR plans to monitor the area, possibly putting signage around so people are aware. As for Hannah Bailey, she plans to continue using the trail, but admits she'll be more cautious. Hafsa Arif, CTV News, Halifax.
Quite the story. Meanwhile, this week, animals at the London Zoo got an early Christmas treat. The zoo's 9-month-old lion cubs got to play with these gifts, which have perfumes inside. The zoo says this is a means of encouraging the lions to use their incredible exploration skills. The zoo's black-capped squirrel monkeys also got some food and treats hidden inside advent calendar boxes. The breakfast included portions of insects, yum, nuts, and seeds.
Still ahead, new findings point to the impact loneliness can have on seniors. Those details after the break.
For many, the holidays are all about friends and family, good company, and good cheer.
But for some seniors, that isn't always possible. CTV's Krista Sharp has more.
The holiday season is often a time to gather with friends and loved ones. But not everyone is always included. And for some seniors especially, the holidays can be a reminder of how socially isolated they are.
Maybe who've experienced a recent loss, so maybe the death of a spouse or a close family member, it can contribute to that sense of isolation.
A recent study out of the Florida State University College of Medicine is linking loneliness to a 31% increased risk of dementia. According to University of Waterloo professor and dementia research chair at the Schlegel UW Research Institute for Aging, otherwise known as RIA, Carrie McKinney, says this is a consistent finding. She says isolation can encourage bad behaviors.
Maybe people might drink a little bit more, or they might be a little bit more likely to smoke or less likely to be physically active. Whereas when you have other people around, often we'll be doing things together and often, hopefully, engaging in some healthier behaviors.
According to RIA, nearly 1 in 3 older Canadian adults are at risk of experiencing social isolation, and 19 to 24% of Canadians over the age of 65 do feel isolated and wish they could participate in more social activities. So RIA created a guide to help address socialization among older adults. The guide shares important risk factors and signs of dementia, plus tips on big and small ways to make a senior in your life feel included.
going over and saying hello, or if you have their phone number, giving them a call. Maybe it's dropping off some cookies or something like that, just to let the person know that you're thinking about them.
Krista Sharp, CTV News, Kitchener.
Creditors have approved a proposed $32.5 billion settlement with 3 tobacco giants. The proposed settlement follows more than 5 years of negotiations. The money will be paid out to provinces and territories as well as individual smokers. They were seeking to recover health care costs from smoking-related illness. The settlement still needs to cross one more hurdle by being approved by a judge. That hearing is set for late January.
Peel Public Health says passengers on a Turkish Airlines flight to Toronto may have been exposed to measles. A case of the disease was recently confirmed in someone who traveled from Kabul to Istanbul and then Istanbul to Toronto on December 4th. People who were at Terminal 1 at Pearson Airport between 6:45 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. that may have been exposed as well. Health officials say those affected should watch for symptoms for 3 weeks after exposure. Symptoms include high fever, cough, runny nose, and a red rash. This is the 3rd case of measles in Peel this year. And provincial figures show COVID-19 continues to send hundreds of Ontarians to hospital each week. Looking at December 1st through to the 7th, 603 patients were admitted for treatment for the virus, and 10 people died. This comes as the positivity rate among lab tests ticked up slightly to 12.4%. That's considered a moderate level of spread. Health experts say the latest vaccines are the best way to stay protected against more serious COVID-19 outcomes.
The Premier is speaking in Toronto this hour alongside Emergency Preparedness Minister Trevor Jones. Let's listen in.
Other Search and Rescue Volunteer Association were deployed to help the town conduct wellness checks on residents, provide food hampers, and support a municipal warming center. That's a great example of what Ontario Corps will do in communities impacted by extreme weather events or natural disasters. It's going to be a game changer for emergency management in Ontario, and I just absolutely love the logo, nice and clean. Today, we're also announcing that as part of our plan to modernize emergency management, we'll be establishing a new Ontario Emergency Preparedness and Response Headquarters. This state-of-the-art facility will be located on surplus government property on Disco Road in Toronto, close to Pearson Airport. It will be a center for coordinated, enhanced responses to emergencies, with dedicated training rooms, storage, warehousing, and aviation infrastructure built to withstand all types of disasters, including earthquakes, tornadoes, and floods. Additionally, we're partnering with Northern College to establish a regional emergency hub in Timmins to strengthen local response capabilities and enhance emergency readiness in Northern Ontario. Before we finish, I want to take a moment to encourage everyone, whether you're a skilled professional or someone who's just considering getting involved for the first time, to join Ontario Corps, to be part of one of our great partner organizations. If you're interested, I encourage you to visit www.ontario.ca/Ontario Corps. That's www.ontario.ca/Ontario Corps. Signing up is easy, and you'll make a real difference in the lives of people impacted by emergencies. Again, thank you all for joining us today, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you.
We will now go to media questions. Reporters, please come to the mic. Please identify yourselves by name and outlet. It'll be one question, one follow-up. First reporter.
Thank you, Mark McAllister from City News. Premier, good to see you again. If you could, obviously this is an announcement about a training center, another headquarters, yes. Obviously lots of equipment to help these organizations out, but these are still volunteer organizations. Is there any money that can be flowing into these organizations that have often needed it, and some of the people that are going to be working for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I want to thank each and every one of them. We're always there to support them. And as we move forward, we'll look at funding mechanisms to make sure they're strong, but also the emergency management provincial staff as well. Since I've been in office, we've faced everything, obviously the pandemic, but flooding up in the north, up in Bracebridge, when Graydon was there with me when he was the mayor at the time, or over in Ottawa, the tornadoes that hit Ottawa and also outside of Toronto, hurricanes. There's been a lot of natural disasters. And I've noticed one thing when I'm on site. All the community comes together. They go to the community center. People are helping out, but there's no central organization organizing everyone. And this will be the central organization that helps folks right behind me be coordinated. And I just appreciate everyone's support. So this is going to be a great venture. And please, if you want to volunteer, and it doesn't matter how old you are, starting from 14 up to 100 years old. When I go into the situation that I mentioned about community centers, do you know who I see making the food? I see the seniors out there making the food. And as for young people who can fill sandbags, young people are strong. They can fill sandbags and do errands that we need. So it's all ages.
We've got a number of questions about the topic
You are
of
watching
discussion.
a live news conference in Toronto. The Premier of Ontario just announcing a $110 million investment over 3 years to strengthen emergency preparedness and response in Ontario. Also announcing a new emergency response headquarters in Toronto, close to Pearson Airport. You see Rahul Singh behind there with Global Medic. We have crews at this news conference. We'll get some more specifics, and we'll have more tonight at 5 and 6.
Still to come, a new all-time high for U.S. tech stocks in early trading today. Details and the rest of your business headlines when we return.
U.S. tech stocks hit another record high this morning.
Andrew Bell of B&M Bloomberg has this business update.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. America's NASDAQ 100 index, dominated by tech giants, hit a new all-time high in early trading. A surge in Broadcom powered gains across the entire chip complex. Broadcom predicted a boom in demand for its artificial intelligence devices. The broader stock market slipped, with Toronto down just under 1% as investors take profits after a year that has seen gains of 20% and more for the major indexes. Shares in Canada's Celestica, a tech-focused maker of equipment for other companies, hit their own record high. That stock has risen more than threefold in 2024, the best showing in Toronto's composite index. And finally, North American oil traded above $70 US a barrel for a gain of about 5% this week. Prices were supported by the prospect of new sanctions on Russia and Iran. One market watcher said, quote, "Last time Donald Trump was president, he drove down Iranian oil exports to close to zero. A repeat of that would remove all talk about a surplus." That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of B&N Bloomberg.
4 airline CEOs will face questions on Parliament Hill today about carry-on baggage fees. They will appear before House of Commons Transport Committee. This follows an announcement by Air Canada that it will soon be getting rid of complimentary carry-on luggage from its cheapest tickets on some flights. WestJet made a similar move earlier this year. MPs are set to hear from the heads of Air Canada, WestJet, Porter, and Air Transat this afternoon. Quick break, sports, and your weekend forecast. It's cold now, but we are in for a warm-up in a few days. We'll have it all when we return.
Enter the amazing universe of 'Twas the Night Before by Cirque du Soleil, an acrobatic retelling of a classic tale. Playing at Meridian Hall, December 12th through January 3rd. Tickets on sale now at cirquedusoleil.com.
The Leafs were looking to put back-to-back wins together as they hosted the Ducks last night.
William Nylander, Jake McCabe firing it, screen in front, scores!
Max Pacioretty opened the scoring in the first. William Nylander gave the Leafs a 2-goal lead, but the Ducks cut the lead in the half before the first period was over. Pacioretty scored his second goal of the night in the second period, and the Leafs won 3-2. Goalie Anthony Stolarz left the game with a lower body injury. Next up for the Leafs is a date with the Red Wings in Detroit tomorrow night.
The shorthanded Raptors took on the Heat in South Beach last night.
Othello Harrison, he went by the wayside.
Toronto jumped out to an early lead against Miami, but couldn't hold on to it in the 114-104 loss. R.J. Barrett finished with his second career triple-double, and Grady Dick led the team with 22 points. The Raptors were without Scotty Barnes after he injured his ankle Monday night. The Raps have the weekend off before hosting Chicago Monday night.
And here we are, another weekend in December. This is a big weekend for a lot of people. They have parties and plans and shopping and all that good stuff. And the weather will cooperate for the most part.
For the most part, we're not looking at anything as far as intense precipitation goes, rain or snow. So it's nice. A lot of folks heading out. You don't want to deal with that additional kind of extra thing of the messy weather. So at least you have that to look forward to. Lots of sunshine throughout the day today, but again, it is very cold out there. Temperature-wise, as we make our way throughout the rest of the day, it's cool, but you know what? It is December. A few light flurries still off those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, but a lot of that tapers off this evening. Right now, -3, feeling like -10, and it doesn't really get much warmer as we head into the afternoon. The good news, though, we're back up to the freezing mark as we head into our Saturday and then above. So we go from this little bit of a cool spell to back to sitting just below seasonal and then above as we head into what is likely kind of the last couple of days before we get into that real holiday season crunch time. Into your Sunday, though, lots of warm weather and the chance of some mixing.
All right, thank you, Jess. And that is CTV News. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.